tens of thousands of black babies are we not allowing to exist? I don't understand how you can't consider that the worst, most brutal form of racism that exists in our country. And it is widespread. You can Google and pull up any map that you want to, look for these abortion clinics. I can promise you, you will find these consistently in walking distance of highly populated minority areas of our country. There's a reason for that. Margaret Sanger obviously is the name that is first and foremost in association with the practice of abortion and the promotion of abortion in our country. And I have some quotes here for you. I'd like to share them in chronological order so as to give you an idea of what her thought process is. And she's very open about this, okay? This is what kills me about this. This is the information is out there. She's open and honest about this, and other progressives are also, okay? So, first, I have 5 quotes. Number 1. As an advocate of birth control, I wish to take advantage of the present opportunity to point out the unbalance between birth rate of the unfit and the fit. Admittedly, the greatest present menace to civilization can never be rectified by the inauguration of a cradle competition between these two races. She's referring to the black race. Okay, I'll get to that. The second quote would be, these 2 words, birth control, sum up our whole philosophy. It means the release and cultivation of the better elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extinction of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization. Quote number 3. This comes from a book that she called My Way to Peace, by the way. I find that ironic. Anyways, apply a stern and rigid policy of sterilization and segregation to that grade of population whose progeny is tainted or whose inheritance is such that objectionable traits may be transmitted to offspring. Okay? Number 4. I accepted an invitation to talk to the women's branch of the Ku Klux Klan. I was escorted to the podium, was introduced, and began to speak. In the end, through simple illustrations, I believed I had accomplished my purpose. A dozen invitations to speak to similar groups were preferred. The Ku Klux Klan was very much in favor of Margaret Sanger and her abortion policies because it was the eugenic proposition that we eliminate the black race, okay? Finally, in an open letter to Dr. Clarence Gable in 1939, she quotes, "We don't want the word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population." Her entire intention of promoting abortion and birth control was to limit and eventually lead to extinction the black race. How can we not find this the most abhorrent form of racism that exists in our country? And yet it's actively promoted for whatever reason by certain people of the same aisle that are in support of this social justice message, okay? I understand that you get behind a certain message and want better outcomes for different people's, particularly disproportionately negative outcome type people, poor people, minorities. All right, I get that. You have to remain consistent if you want to apply the racism phenomenon to society. Abortion must be included. It's easily the most malicious form of racism in my mind. All right, but you move on past Margaret Sanger, who you could simply say, okay, well, that's just one ideologue. Okay, well, we've been promoting her ideology for quite some time, decades in this country. Okay, Supreme Court justices. All right, we go back to Oliver Wendell Holmes, and I picked him specifically because he is a progressive icon in this country as far as Supreme Court justices go. He's one of I think that I read that he's the second most referred to justice in American society. All right, in terms of citing past cases and judicial ideology. All right, and I think that that's probably mostly because he was so devoutly in support of FDR's plans for redistribution of wealth. Okay, he was very much a proponent of siding with FDR's federal government intervention in the redistribution of monies, which is another argument entirely. But I think that's why progressives tend to favor his opinions over others in many cases. Anyways, so for Mr. Holmes, in Buck v. Bell in 1927, actually issued the ruling, and I believe that he was the writer of the affirmation of the opinion in question, ruled that compulsory sterilization of the unfit, including the intellectually disabled, and I quote, for the protection and health of the state, did not violate the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. He's referring to black people here, okay? And then you have a sitting member of the Supreme Court, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Again, progressive champion, and I realize that that's for a variety of reasons. Her support of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, her support of gay rights, things of that nature. I get it. But we're talking about racism and the propagation of such, and in this particular case of abortion. In an interview with a fashion magazine, Justice Ginsburg, speaking in relation to states that are applying restrictions upon abortions over the last couple of decades, meaning simply that they have increased the week, that you're allowed to get an abortion, from 12 weeks to 20 weeks, things of that nature, or that you're ruling against certain abortifacient drugs within the Affordable Care Act policies that Catholic nuns, Hobby Lobby has to pay for and provide their employees, even though I can't see the reason why a nun would need contraception. That's beside the point. Here's her quote. The impact of all these restrictions is on poor women, and added, it makes no sense as a national policy to promote birth only among poor people. When she was interviewed about the decision of Roe v. Wade years prior, this is her quote, that she viewed that decision as being intentional to control population growth. Quote, particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Her assessment of Roe v. Wade was then confirmed later in the Bill Clinton presidency by the co-counsel of that case, Ron Weddington, who became an advisor to President Clinton. This is Mr. Weddington's quote. You can start immediately to eliminate the barely educated, unhealthy, and poor segment of our country by making abortifacients cheap and universally available. It's what we all know is true, but we only whisper it. He's admitting that it is intentional for this policy, a national policy, to eliminate certain populations. I'll let you decide which populations he's talking about. I think you know. And again, when I use the term abortifacients there, what I mean, that's not birth control, okay? Birth control is the prevention of conception. Abortifacient being conception has already happened. You take this particular chemical and it kills the conception that has happened. Abortifacient and birth control are not the same thing. Not the same thing at all, okay? This part right here is simply an anecdote, and this is information garnered by Kevin Williamson, who writes for the National Review. If you ever want to read anything intelligent, just Google Kevin D. Williamson. Whatever article you decide to read and pull up, it will be incredibly well thought out and intelligent. This is a tidbit that he found. So in 1980, a punk rock band, the Dead Kennedys, released a song called Kill the Poor. And singer Jello Biafra considers the benefits in the lyrics of the song of the nationwide abortion policy, okay? He talks about the elimination of unsightly slums, the lowering of welfare taxes, reduction of overcrowding, reduction of crime that he believes would be a result of this national policy. Quote from the song, "The sun beams down on a brand new day, Jane Fonda on the screen today convinced the liberals it's okay. That's exactly what has happened in this country in relation to abortion. It's exactly correct. I believe that the progressive mind has been convinced that this is a women's issue as opposed to a protection of a new human body. And this issue, as a national policy, unequivocally began as a promotion to end a certain race or to limit the spread of their progeny. That is not a disputable thing. It's open. It's out there. Okay? All right. Moving on. The last thing that I would like to talk about in relation to this is the thing that bothers me most about the Kaepernick situation is not necessarily the kneeling for the national anthem. It's who the messenger is. Okay, when I'm asked about this as far as a person-to-person conversation, what do you think about NFL players kneeling for the national anthem? My response is very simple. Okay, it is that I would not want to live in a country that didn't allow it. You know, I bet you if you took a knee in front of Kim Jong-un, you'd probably get a bullet to the head. That's my guess. And I know that there have been governments and regimes across the world throughout history that have had that mindset. They're going to kill you if you don't follow the state's orders. Okay, I want to live in a country that has that freedom, and it is a nonviolent expression of a grievance. Okay, and I get that. I respect that. I don't think that the person leading the movement is the best face to put on the movement, and here's a couple reasons why. For one, he didn't grow up in